Every Jewish holiday includes in the liturgy an opportunity to listen to Torah. There's plenty of prayers to go around, but why is it that we always include the Torah? And I think it's really a foundational response. Torah is our story. It's the text. It's where it all emanates from. And to hear the different parts of the Torah at different times of the year connects us to this ancient text. It keeps it new. It keeps it fresh. It challenges us. The same texts will ask us new questions from era to era, from year to year, from different points in our lives. So what we hear in a Torah portion on Rosh Hashanah when we're 5 years old is different when we're 35 years old. It's the same text, but we've changed, and the text changes us. It's an ongoing process. And so for High Holy Days, the text challenges us for real in many different ways. What are we willing to sacrifice? What are our limits? What is the thing we're willing to live for? What's the thing we may be willing to die for? Another lesson is the lesson of gathering as a community, and that we're all called upon by the Holy One to show up, not just physically, but to show up with our whole selves, as it says in the Shema, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. So it's not a static reading process. Reading from the Torah and the themes that we hear on the High Holy Days are all about how we grow and how we change and how the text stays the same as we evolve. Of course, it's an honor, truly, literally an honor, to hear the Torah chanted, to be present for that, whether it's sitting in the sanctuary or as we will be sitting in our homes, in our virtual holy space that we create. And of course, for all of us, there's such a sense of gratitude about the people that have taken the time to learn how to chant Torah, because when they do, they're sharing that not easy skill to enable us to feel in the text itself, to embrace it in the ancient way our ancestors have always embraced it, listening to someone else chant ancient words and an ancient melody. And we're lucky to be able to hear something about what it must be like to get ready to chant from the Torah on the holiest days of the year on the Jewish calendar.
The whole notion of being close to the Torah has been one of the great honors of my life. I grew up as a girl in Orthodox Judaism, where the women were upstairs and the men were downstairs, and the Torah was so far away I could barely see it. So over time, there's been this progression of getting closer and closer to the Torah, to be able to be on the same level as the Torah, to be able to touch it as it goes by. And the ultimate honor is to be able to read from the Torah, and the ultimate time for that honor is on the High Holidays.
It feels really great to have this movement of the Torah through our family. So first Jonah read it, and then I read it, and my dad read it, and my mom read it when she was at her bat mitzvah. So it's really great to all share this experience of reading this sacred text.
I mean, it is bittersweet, of course. These are very awkward and odd times that we're living in, and so much of my experience with High Holidays is the reunion with our community and the celebration of the community that the Temple Beth Avodah provides to me and my family. But for us to be asked and have the privilege to represent our community is just really wonderful. It's a real honor that we're super grateful for.
When I'm reading Torah, it doesn't really matter where it is. It even can be while I'm practicing. There's this feeling of joy and elation and a feeling of history. It really brings me right back to, all of the generations before us, some who made it and some who didn't. For me, it makes me feel like I'm part of a larger community, something bigger than myself, and I'm very respectful of the fact that I have to do it right. So I work really hard at it, and I just feel like it's an honor.
Being Jewish is like a big part of my identity in the high holidays. Me chanting Torah is a special tradition for my family, and it's nice to have this tradition.
One of the things that I've loved about reading Torah is that it brings me deeper into the holiday. And I first read Torah at Beth Avodah, my daughter's bat mitzvah, because the rabbi told me it would be a mitzvah to chant Torah along with my daughter. So that was something I started then. And then when I was asked to do it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, especially with a group of women, it felt like a way to take the holiday deeper, in the sense that as a child in a conservative synagogue, very few women were up on the bima, although I was bat mitzvahed. And there was a time I attended Orthodox services and there were no women on the bima. So to be able to participate with these wonderful, talented women is a gift. And I just feel that it makes the holiday that much more meaningful.
Years ago, a noted feminist theologian wrote a book called Texts of Terror. In that book, she studied the most disturbing Torah portions, disturbing from the perspective of violence or ethical questions. And in the process of doing that, really gave us a new way to conceptualize these painful Torah portions that are part of our story. How do we deal with them? How do we cope with them? Certainly, this Torah portion for Rosh Hashanah is among the most disturbing of all the Torah portions that we read. Akedah Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, portrays a moment when Abraham, an elderly father, is commanded to take his son, his only son, the one he loves, Isaac, to bring him to a mountain, and there on the mountain to offer him up as a sacrifice. Abraham never questions the command. He never seems to doubt why he's being asked to do it. The text itself says it's a test, that God is testing Abraham. And we, the reader, wonder, Abraham has already shown himself to be the founder of our tradition, the father of our tradition. How at this point is God going to give him such a horrible deed to perform? What kind of God would do that? And what are the ramifications of this commandment? Are we supposed to listen to such words? Are we supposed to absolutely oppose them? In the story, we read that Abraham does indeed obey God, brings Isaac, this quiet and subservient child, we think age 13, to this place that God commands him to appear at. He builds an altar, he puts his son on the altar, he lifts up a knife, he is about to slice the carotid artery on his son's neck. And it's only in that moment, with his arm raised, that an angel from God appears and says, Abraham, Abraham, don't do it, stop, desist. And we wonder, did Abraham know that angel was coming? It doesn't say so in the text. We pray, we wish, we hope that Abraham knew. But the text doesn't let us off the hook. It doesn't let Abraham off the hook either. Why do we read this on Rosh Hashanah? You know, there's no guidebook that tells us the answer. But I think it's a reminder to us of just how much we value life and the life of our loved ones. And I think I feel inspired every time I hear this Torah portion chanted in all of its difficult detail, that I can say the God that I worship, as opposed to the way that Abraham worshiped his God, we're not asking to do such a thing. And were God to say, if I were to have some sort of vision that said, take your child that you love and sacrifice them, I would say, no. And that might be the strongest message of all, that we have the power in the face of injustice or wrong to simply say, no.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaTorah. Baruch Adonai HaBorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim Natan lanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Vayehi achar hadivarim ha'ele v'ha'elohim nisa et Avraham Vayomer elav Avraham Vayomer hineni Vayomer kachna et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et yitzhak velech lecha el eretz hamoria v'ha'alehu sham leola al achad heharim asher omar elecha vayashkem Avraham baboker vayahavosh et hamoro vayika et shenei ne'arav ito ve'et yitzhak beno vayvaka atzei ola vayakom vayele el hamakom asher amar lo ha'elohim Bayom Hashlishi Vayisa Avraham et Einav Vayar et hamakom merahok Vayomer Avraham el ne'arav Shavu lahem po im ha'hamor Va'ani v'hana'ar neleha adko V'nishahave v'nashuva alehem Vayika Avraham et azeh ha'olah Vayasem alitak beno Vayika beyado et ha'esh ve'et ha'ma'ahelet Vayelhu shnehem yakdav Vayomer Yitzhak el Avraham aviv Vayomer avi Vayomer hineni veni Vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'etzim v'yehasei le'olah Vayomer Avraham Elohim yir'ei lo ha'asei le'olah b'ni Vayelhu shnehem yaktav Vayavohu el hamakom asher amar lo ha'elohim Vayiven sham Avraham et hamizbeach vayaroch et ha'etzim vayakod et Yitzhak beno vayahasem oto al hamizbeach mimahal la'etzim Vayishlach Avraham et yado vayikach et ha'ma'achelet lishchot et beno Vayikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim Vayomer Avraham Vayomer hineni Vayomer al tishlach yadecha el hanar ve'al taslo me'uma ki ata yadati ki Elohim ata velo hasachta et binhat yehideha mimeni Vayisa Avraham et Einav Vayahor vehine ayil ahar nechaz basevach bekarnav Vayehelech Avraham vayikach et ha'ayil vayalehu le'olah tachat beno Vayikra Avraham
Shem hamakom hahu Adonai yireh asher ya'ameher hayom behar Adonai yireh vayikra malach Adonai el Avraham shenit min hashamayim.
Vayomer binishpati ne'um Adonai ki ya'an asher asita et hadabar hazeh velo chasachta et bincha et yechidecha ki varech avarechecha veharba arbe et zaracha kechochevei hashamayim v'chachol asher al sefat hayam vayirash zaracha et sha'ar oyevav v'hibarechu v'zaracha kol goyei haaretz ekev asher shamata bekoli vayashov Avraham el ne'arav vayakumu vayelechu yachedav el be'er shava vayeshev Avraham biver shava.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan לנו את התורה וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. Baruch atah Adonai נותן התורה.
I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. And where does my help? Where does my help? Where does my help come from? I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Then where does my help? Where does my help? Where does my help come from? Oh, Esaena el Hehari me'ayin yavo Ezri. Oh, Esaena el Hehari me'ayin yavo Ezri. Esaena, 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 Esaena. I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. I lift my eyes to the mountains. And where does my help?